While you panic about running out of bottled water after 2 hours, pirates survived months at sea using a liquid so foul it would make you vomit instantly. Yet it kept them alive. Fresh water was basically liquid gold on a pirate ship. And just like gold, it disappeared fast. These weren't luxury cruise ships with fancy filtration systems. Pirates crammed into wooden vessels where everything went wrong quickly. The biggest enemy wasn't rival ships or storms. It was time itself. Water stored in wooden barrels turned nasty within days, especially under the blazing Caribbean sun. The heat worked like a bacterial incubator, turning perfectly good drinking water into a green, slimy mess that smelled worse than the ship's toilet area. Well, here's the thing about those barrels. They weren't exactly sterile containers. Pirates filled them from whatever source they could find. Rivers, wells, sometimes even questionable ponds. Germs hitched a ride from the very beginning. Then the tropical heat kicked in, turning those barrels into bacterial playgrounds where microscopic creatures threw wild parties at the crew's expense. The smell hit you first. Fresh water gradually developed this awful rotten egg stench that made your stomach turn. But the weird part is, pirates often had no choice but to drink it anyway. When you're weeks away from land and the alternative is dying of thirst, you hold your nose and gulp down whatever slime you've got left. Smart pirates learned to use their water fast within the first few days of setting sail. After that, every sip became a gamble. Would this mouthful just taste terrible, or would it leave you writhing in agony with stomach cramps and fever? Many crew members got seriously sick from their own water supply. Talk about an enemy within. Then there's the sheer volume problem. A ship full of grown men doing physical labor under scorching heat needed massive amounts of water daily. Those barrels that seemed huge when full suddenly looked pathetically small when you calculated daily rations for 30 hungry pirates over several weeks at sea. Pirates watched their water levels drop with genuine terror. Running out meant either finding land immediately or facing a slow, agonizing death. Captains became obsessed with water management, checking barrels daily and calculating exactly how long their supply would last. The desperate search for solutions pushed pirates to become surprisingly creative. When your life depends on clean water and every drop counts, you start looking at the world differently. Rain clouds become beacons of hope, and every island represents potential salvation. But those aren't the only tricks these seafaring survivors developed. When those dark storm clouds rolled across the horizon, pirates didn't curse the weather like most sailors. They celebrated. Rain meant survival, and every drop was precious liquid gold falling from the sky. Smart crews turned their entire ship into a massive water collection system. They'd stretch out every spare sail, cloth, and canvas they could find. The bigger the surface area, the more water they could catch. Pirates would tie corners of sails to create makeshift funnels, directing precious rainwater straight into their empty barrels. Even dirty shirts and torn fabric got pressed into service. A single heavy storm could transform a crew's fortunes overnight. Imagine going to sleep with bone-dry water barrels and waking up to find them overflowing with fresh, clean rainwater. It happened more often than you'd think, and those lucky crews knew they'd just bought themselves weeks of survival. But here's where things get interesting. Some pirate crews actually developed rain dances and weather prayers. Makes sense, right? When your life depends on something you can't control, superstition kicks in fast. Captains would scan the skies obsessively, reading cloud formations like treasure maps. The weird part is, many pirates became surprisingly good at predicting weather patterns out of pure necessity. Rainwater had another huge advantage over their usual supplies. It was naturally pure. No green slime, no strange taste, no risk of deadly bacteria that plague stored water in wooden barrels. Fresh from the clouds meant fresh for drinking, and pirates knew this instinctively. New crew members learned this lesson quickly during their first voyage. Experienced pirates would grab the rookies during the first rainfall and show them exactly how to position collection cloths. "Rain is gold, boy," they'd say, and they meant it literally. Missing a good downpour could mean the difference between reaching the next island safely or dying of thirst 3 days out. Well, not every storm was a blessing. Violent hurricanes could destroy collection systems and scatter precious water barrels across the deck. Pirates had to balance catching rain with protecting their ship from nature's fury. The challenge was timing and preparation. Crews that stayed ready for sudden storms survived longer than those caught off guard. But what happened when the skies stayed clear for weeks, and even the best prepared crews found themselves approaching dangerous islands with dwindling supplies? When the water barrels turned green and slimy, pirates had one reliable backup plan: find an island, fast. But here's the thing about island hopping for water. It wasn't like pulling into a modern marina. These weren't tourist destinations with helpful signs pointing toward fresh water this way. Pirates had to become part-time detectives, part-time gamblers, and full-time optimists every time they spotted land on the horizon. The smart crews developed a nose for good water sources. Literally, experienced pirates could smell fresh streams from surprisingly far distances. The scent of clean, flowing water has a distinct quality that cuts through salty sea air. Veterans taught newcomers this trick early. Your nose might save your life before your eyes spot anything useful. Then there's the local knowledge problem. Islands weren't empty. People lived there, and they knew every water source for miles around. Some pirate crews got lucky and found friendly locals willing to trade information for goods. Others had to rely on captured sailors who knew the area. A few enterprising captains even kept detailed maps marking reliable water spots, passing this precious intelligence between trusted crews. But not every island delivered what pirates desperately needed. Marshlands looked promising from a distance, but offered nothing but brackish, salty disappointment up close. Some islands had streams that tasted fine, but carried diseases that would flatten a crew within days. Others had beautiful, crystal-clear pools that were actually saltwater springs. Nature's cruelest joke to thirsty sailors. The really clever pirates learned to read the landscape like a book. Dense green vegetation usually meant fresh water somewhere nearby. Birds flying inland at dawn often headed toward drinking spots. Even the behavior of local animals provided clues about where to dig or search. Weather patterns mattered too. Islands with regular cloud cover often had better water sources than sun-baked rocks. Pirates started noticing which types of terrain held on to rainwater longest and which geological formations suggested underground springs. Some crews got creative with their trading approaches. Instead of intimidating locals, they'd offer protection services, ship repairs, or exotic goods from other islands. This diplomatic approach often yielded better information than threats and reduced the chances of being led into traps or ambushes. Well, even the best island-hopping strategy had limitations. Weather could strand crews for days. Hostile locals made water gathering dangerous, and some stretches of ocean simply didn't offer any suitable islands for hundreds of miles. When island stops failed, pirates needed backup solutions that didn't depend on finding land. When your water barrel looked more like swamp soup than something you'd want to drink, pirates had to get creative fast. Dirty water could kill you just as dead as a cutlass to the gut. So these sea dogs invented some surprisingly clever filtering tricks using whatever junk they had lying around their ships. The most basic filter was dead simple. Stretch a piece of cloth over a jug and pour the nasty water through it. Sounds easy, right? Well, after a few uses, that cloth would turn a disgusting shade of green from all the algae, bugs, and mysterious floating chunks it caught. Pirates would wring out these filters and use them again, because wasting fabric meant wasting your life. But here's where it gets interesting. Some pirates figured out that broken pottery pieces could work even better than cloth. They'd stack pottery shards, bits of coral, and even crush shells in layers inside barrels or large containers. The water would trickle down through these makeshift layers, coming out cleaner on the other side. Not crystal clear, mind you, but clean enough that it wouldn't immediately make you sick. Then there were the really desperate times when pirates would copy what they saw on tropical islands. They noticed how islanders used sand and rocks to filter their drinking water. Smart pirates would layer sand, small pebbles, and larger rocks in containers, basically building their own version of nature's water treatment system right on deck. And the weird part is, some pirates got so desperate they'd use their own hats as emergency filters. Picture a grizzled pirate holding his tricorn hat over a cup, pouring questionable water through the fabric lining. These weren't fashion accessories anymore. They were survival tools. The filtering process was slow and messy, but it beat dying from whatever microscopic nasties were swimming in unfiltered barrel water. Pirates learned that multiple layers worked better than single filters, so they'd run water through cloth first, then sand, then more cloth again. Of course, filtering only removed the visible chunks and some of the worst contamination. The water still wasn't what you'd call safe by today's standards, but it was often the difference between getting sick immediately versus maybe staying healthy for a few more days. But even the best filters couldn't solve every water problem pirates faced. Sometimes the water was so contaminated that filtering wasn't enough, and that's when pirates had to turn to some truly strange purification methods that mixed real science with pure superstition. Pirates weren't just rough sailors throwing water into barrels and hoping for the best. They developed some surprisingly clever tricks to keep their water fresh, though many bordered on pure superstition. Charcoal became their secret weapon. Smart pirates would drop chunks of burnt wood into their water barrels, and it actually worked. The charcoal absorbed nasty smells and pulled out some of the gunk that made water taste like swamp juice. They didn't understand the science behind it, but they knew it helped. Makes sense, right? But here's where things got weird. Pirates were superstitious as hell, and they applied this to everything, including their drinking water. Some crews would gather around fresh barrels and chant mysterious words, believing their rituals would keep the water pure longer. They'd trace symbols on barrel lids with their fingers or mutter prayers to sea gods they'd invented on the spot. The really desperate crews hired what they called water witches. These were usually local island folk who claimed they could bless water with special powers. For a few coins or stolen trinkets, these so-called witches would wave herbs over barrels, sprinkle salt in specific patterns, or even spit into the water while speaking gibberish. Did it work? Probably not, but desperate pirates will try anything. Well, some of their superstitions weren't completely crazy. Pirates discovered that adding certain herbs and plants could actually improve water quality. Bay leaves, for instance, helped prevent some types of spoilage. They didn't know why, but generations of trial and error taught them which plants helped and which ones killed crew members. The strangest ritual involved full moon water blessings. Pirates believed water collected during a full moon would stay fresh longer. They'd place their best barrels on deck during bright moonlit nights, convinced the moon's rays had magical purifying powers. Ridiculous? Maybe, but it got them to pay extra attention to their water storage during calm, clear nights. Then there were the silver coin believers. Some pirates dropped silver pieces into their barrels, swearing it kept water from turning green. Turns out silver does have antimicrobial properties, though pirates had no clue about that scientific fact. What's fascinating is how these superstitions mixed with genuine attempts at water purification. Pirates stumbled onto real solutions while chasing magical ones. Clean water literally meant the difference between a healthy crew and a ship full of sick, dying men. But even with all these tricks, water remained a constant worry. When purification failed and superstitions fell short, pirates had to get creative with alternatives. When clean water became too risky to drink, pirates turned to their most famous solution, alcohol. But here's the thing, most people get wrong about pirates and rum. They weren't stumbling around drunk all day like Hollywood suggests. The alcohol was actually their water purification system. Smart pirates mixed rum with whatever questionable water they had, creating what they called grog. This wasn't about getting wasted, it was about staying alive. The alcohol killed germs that would otherwise send the crew running to the ship's edge with their stomachs churning. Pure rum was too strong and too valuable to waste, but watered-down grog? That became the daily drink that kept pirates functional. The ratio mattered more than you'd think. Too much rum and the crew couldn't work the sails or fight off rival ships. Too little and the nasty bacteria in stale water would still make everyone sick. Experienced pirates knew exactly how much alcohol it took to make foul water safe without turning their ship into a floating disaster. But grog came with its own sneaky problem. While it killed germs, alcohol actually dehydrates you. Pirates who relied too heavily on their rum rations found themselves even thirstier than before. The irony was brutal. The thing that kept them from getting sick was also making their water problems worse. Then there's the surprising part about pirate drinking habits. Fresh water was still the gold standard when they could get it. Many crews would celebrate finding a clean stream more than discovering actual treasure. The alcohol was backup, not first choice. Pirates understood that clear, cold, fresh water was the real prize. Some ships carried different types of alcohol depending on what they could steal or trade for. Wine worked too, though it didn't last as long in tropical heat. Beer was popular, but went bad quickly. Rum became the favorite because it was strong enough to do the job and stable enough for long voyages. The whole pirates were always drunk myth misses the point entirely. These were survival experts who used alcohol as medicine, not recreation. Well, maybe a little recreation after a successful raid. What happens when even the grog runs low and desperate times call for desperate measures? Pirates had to get creative with rationing systems that would make a military quartermaster proud. When your ship holds 50 thirsty pirates and only 3 barrels of decent water, math becomes deadly serious. Smart captains knew that without strict rationing, their crew would drink themselves into disaster within days. Every pirate got their daily share measured out precisely, usually about a pint if they were lucky, sometimes less if supplies ran dangerously low. The watermaster, typically the quartermaster or someone equally trusted, controlled the barrels like they were filled with liquid gold. Because honestly, they basically were. Pirates caught stealing extra water face punishment that made walking the plank look merciful. Some crews used wooden tokens. Each pirate got their daily token, traded it for their water ration, and that was it until tomorrow. But here's where pirates got clever about survival. They realized that salty foods made them desperately thirsty, so smart crews started cutting back on salted pork and dried fish when water ran low. Makes sense, right? Why torture yourself with extra thirst when you're already rationing every precious drop? Then there's the fascinating trick with citrus fruits. Pirates discovered that sucking on lemon or lime slices helped them produce more saliva, which temporarily fooled their bodies into feeling less parched. Brilliant, considering they were already carrying citrus to prevent scurvy anyway. 2 problems solved with 1 sour solution. Well-prepared captains always planned for the worst-case scenario. They'd hide emergency water supplies in secret compartments, sometimes splitting the crew's knowledge so only trusted officers knew about backup barrels. Some pirates even carried extra empty containers ready to catch unexpected rain or collect water during surprise island stops. The psychological game mattered just as much as the physical rationing. Experienced pirates learned to eat their daily ration of food slowly, savoring every bite to distract from constant thirst. They'd time their meals carefully, spreading them throughout the day rather than wolfing everything down at once. And the weird part is how pirates developed an almost supernatural ability to stretch their water further than anyone thought possible. They'd rinse their mouths with tiny sips, holding the water longer before swallowing. Every drop counted when survival hung in the balance. But even the most careful rationing and clever tricks couldn't always save a crew when disaster struck. When storms failed to come and islands proved barren, pirates faced choices that would test every limit of human endurance and ingenuity. When fresh water ran completely dry, pirates didn't just sit around waiting to die. They got creative in ways that would make modern survival experts wince. Chewing rope became a standard trick aboard desperate ships. Pirates would gnaw on hemp fibers like tobacco, tricking their mouths into producing saliva. The rough texture kept their mouths busy while the mind forgot about thirst for precious minutes. Sure, it tasted like tarred string, but it beat the agony of a completely dry throat. Then there's the morning dew collection ritual. Before sunrise, pirates would run their hands along wet sails and rigging, collecting every precious drop of moisture that had formed overnight. They'd wring out cloth strips into cups, sometimes gathering just enough water to wet their lips. Makes sense, right? When you're dying of thirst, even a few drops feel like liquid gold. But here's where things got truly desperate. Some crews resorted to drinking brackish water, that nasty mix of salt and fresh water found near coastlines. It was like playing Russian roulette with your stomach. Brackish water could keep you alive for a few days, but it also caused violent cramps and diarrhea that actually made dehydration worse. The weird part is how pirates dealt with the mental torture of extreme thirst. Ship logs mention crews gathering in circles to tell elaborate stories, sing songs, or share memories of their favorite taverns. Distraction became survival medicine. One captain wrote about pirates describing ice-cold ale in such detail that everyone temporarily forgot their suffering. Well, desperate times called for increasingly bizarre measures. Some pirates tried drinking their own urine, a practice that sounds disgusting but can actually help short-term survival. Others attempted to filter seawater through multiple layers of cloth, hoping to remove enough salt to make it drinkable. Spoiler alert, it didn't work, but hope kept them trying. Pirates even resorted to sucking on metal coins or buttons, believing the metallic taste would somehow satisfy their thirst. It didn't, but the psychological effects sometimes helped crew members push through another hour of agony. These extreme survival tactics reveal something important about pirate life. When your back was against the wall and death was knocking, innovation meant the difference between living another day or becoming shark food. But even the most resourceful pirates knew these desperate measures were temporary fixes. The real question became, how did successful pirate crews avoid reaching these breaking points in the first place?